what about biggest flight in Argentina? It's easy, or you have some troubles in the flight and.
So, uh, let's speak a little bit about the big flights in Argentina. So the first thing, it's it's making some music. So the first thing, it's not easy at all. When I started to fly in Argentina, the reason why I flew in Argentina was I climbed the Aconcagua with my wife, 7,000 meters. So wow, there's oxygen lack at 7,000 meters, so we had no oxygen. And I stood up this mountain in 7,000 meters, a little bit dizzy in your brain. And I said, wow, I have to fly here. So, and I had 1 week more. My wife had to go home to work, and I had 1 week more. And I asked before Tilo House if there's nobody in Argentina that I could fly there, probably. Yeah? They said, yeah, I know a guy. He showed me a crazy video with some 12 meters per second wave. And then I called this guy, and Marcelo did not speak any English, only Spanish, and I knew round about 5 words in Spanish. So we spoke 20 minutes. So the essential words were wave, onda, planeador, glider, and volar, flying there. And after 20 minutes, we said, okay, probably we should make a little bit more conversation, because it was a little bit reduced. So my wife speaks quite well Spanish, and then we say, okay, I want to fly there. Probably is there a possibility? And then I went in the small village. They picked me up at the airfield after the Aconcagua. We were in Buenos Aires, and they said, no, it's not very far, so we come to pick you up. The funny thing, there I think there was a little Fiat something, and we were 4 or 5 persons inside, and with my luggage. And it was not very far from Buenos Aires, because it was in the provincia Buenos Aires. It was only 600 kilometers. They came with 4 guys from the club to speak with me. And so then we went to their club in the flatlands, a lot of mosquitoes. And I flew with everybody in the club. I had not the right to fly, because I had no license for them, but I flew with everybody, even with people that had no license. And then after that, I did really, now I could say I spoke 10 words of Spanish, but it was really very funny. Club of America in the Provincia of Buenos Aires. And and then we decided to make next year expedition in the area where this guy, Marcelo, had this 12 meters per second in the Cordillera de Vento, which is really one of the best waves that I ever made. And and then the next year we went there. I came with the Ventus and with a trailer, and then we went there, and my wife flew the Ventus, and I flew the Jantar, and then we flew together, and we flew the first 1,000 kilometer flights there. I had no clue how to fly and how it works, and so it was the same thing. You needed to fly, and then later I had the possibility to fly with the Stenner, and we made a scientific expedition there with Mountain Wave Project. One of the reasons was that it was, of course, easier to get authorization when you make scientific stuff instead of gliding, pure gliding. And there I started to learn a lot of things, and explored, and I said, okay, I flew every day. And that is, we spoke about frequency before. That is the thing in Argentina. You have a frequency, it's even better than here. You can really nearly fly every day. It's unbelievable. Thermals, ridge soaring, wave, and so on. And the extension, of course, the Cordillera is so big The extension is more than 1,000 kilometers. Of course, the wind is not always there. You have frontal systems, and so the thing you spoke about, if it was easy, compared to here, you have areas where you can fly 500 kilometers. So my fastest flight was 500 kilometers out and return, and I started it at 6 o'clock in the evening, and I made it in 90 minutes, 500 kilometers. So that is average of 307 kilometers per hour. And just to give you an idea how strong that can be, but this was really the strongest weather I ever had and the fastest thing. But the long distance I made before, the longest flight was a 3,000 kilometer flight in one day in 15 hours, 20 minutes. And so it started as well as a flight, an out and return of 2,000 kilometers, which is much more difficult because you are going very far from your home base, coming back. But it did not fit. The weather was not good enough to go further to the north, and I said, okay, I will stop. But we were so fast. So in the first hour after, usually you need 1 hour to climb up to 6,000 meters to start your flight, really start your, and the wave and there. And so in the first hour after start, we started at 7 o'clock in the morning in 6,000 meters. In the first hour, I flew an average of 280 kilometers per hour. And I said, wow, this is so fast, but it's not worth to try to go there, to make my turn point. Okay, let's try to make a big flight. And then there was born a little bit the idea to make 3,000 kilometers, which was really, and finally we made it. It was really unbelievable to make 3,000 kilometers. Still until today, it's the biggest flight with a record flight, and even the biggest flight even in online contest. I think we made now, with the Stemme I made 2 years ago, I made 2,800 kilometers, and the Stemme is a good compromise, but it's not like Antares or the new, even not like your birds, you know. And so it was really unbelievable, and I never in 13 years had the opportunity to make the second time a 3,000 kilometer flight. So what we speak about, is it easy? No, it's not easy. You need to work. It's the same thing like here. You need to go, because for this flight, 3 turn points, I say sometimes it's the easiest flight that I made, because you can stop when you want. You can say, okay, it's a free turn point flight. It was not a declared task. But you have to be aware that you have to go very fast to this point, a little bit further even, not to lose time, because you have to another point in the very far south, and the weather is limited. It's probably 1,000 kilometers. More than in a high pressure, as I spoke before. But still, you have to go really to the furthest point to the north, to the furthest point to the south, but not lose time. And this is because it's very easy. The funny thing is, I made a speech on the Aero, I think. Yes, it was on the Aero, about my world record. The first I made with the Stemme, 2,450 kilometers. And there I spoke about this 2,450, and there was one guy who said, do you think it should be possible to make 3,000 kilometers? And then I made a joke a little bit. I said, yeah, it should be not so difficult. So remember, you start, you make a minimum altitude, you accelerate to 200 kilometers per hour, and you hold the speed for 15 hours, then you make 3,000 kilometers. So it's easy. And I did not believe it would be possible to make 3,000 kilometers, because with what I knew there, that is always limit. And what we should take into account as well is, when you make this kind of flight with waves, you have always low pressure and high pressure system very close. So, and you are going very close to the low pressure system. And you have frontal systems. And it's very often a question that you have really the right dose of humidity to see the rotor alignments and the wave, and not to have rain. And so I explored really, and in the Stenne, that is really the greatest tool to explore, because I went very often in the south. There you spoke about facility, more easy. There are certain areas where you can go tomorrow, you will make 200 kilometers per hour speed. It's easy. You see there are lenticularis like that, you have rotor alignments, there's an airfield, so it's not very complicated. But when you're going to the south, it's a little bit like here. You know, Pic de Bure, easy wave. You can do it every day when there's a northern wind, western wind, northwestern. So, but when you want to go further to the south, or you want to go from the Pic de Bure in the Briançon area, and then it's much more complicated. You have isolated waves, you need to know. And so the south, for me, there was, I said it always, that's the end of the world, because you flew against the front is coming in, and then you have 8 octaves. You say, oh, you are 400 kilometers south of our base where we were in San Martin de los Andes, and then you're flying 400 kilometers to the south, and it's called Lago General Winter, stops. And I needed a lot of years to study there how to do it, because they are isolated waves, and there's a lot of cloud covering, there's rain below, and you need to know the landscape. So this is what I say, you need to study. When you're flying above 7 octaves, you see a small hole, you need what is below. And you need to know, is it raining? Can I have this airfield? Is there access? How is the wind on the airfield? Is 50 knots? Like that, and so on and so on. And so it's like every other thing, when you are going in this range of distances. And a friend, this Marcelo, the first guy who flew in 1990, I think he flew the first 1,000 kilometer flight, but it was not a regular flight, it was not a record, because he made the photo of a mountain, and he made 1,000 kilometers with a standard service, flew with the wind, the last leg with the wind. And Marcelo always said, yeah, I want to wait for the best day. I say, that's an arrow. You need to fly with every day, because even with the 3,000 kilometers, we are struggling, we had some problems, and it was not easy. And you need this training, and you need this kind of weather patterns, that you understand how it works. Because they are very often it's similar. So this 400 kilometers I spoke about is very often humid situation in the south. But sometimes it's going further to the south, and it looks the same. I still, after all these observations, after all the year, I still do not know. Sometimes you have the same wind direction, you have the same weather pattern in the forecast, and you have 3 meters per second, and sometimes you have 9 meters per second. But you do not really know. So you say, okay, what is important in wave? You have the range of the mountains, the wind is coming from the west, it's perpendicular to the mountain, and it does not change the direction in the altitude, it's not too much humid, but it's humid enough to see the waves, and so on and so on. But the vertical, the amplitude, so the real determining factor, like you have when you have in thermals, is the same. So some days you have cumulus clouds, it looks quite nice, and you have 2 meters per second. And sometimes you have 5 or 6. When we went to the glacier in the north, in Switzerland, wow, 4 meters, 5 meters, wow, high cloud base. And sometimes you have the same cloud base, but you have 2 meters, and you're quite slow. And this is what I say, okay, you need to fly, you need to try. When I started here in Vinon and in Pumasson, then I say, okay, it's wind, fly. doing now? Okay, it's wind. Okay, good. Looks not so good, but
You can fly.
it's there. Of course, when the cloud base is 1200 meters, I would not go to fly. I think you do not lose too much because it's a little bit rainy. But anyway, so I think there's no secret. Whatever you are doing in life, you are playing guitar, you are playing a violina, or you are playing piano. There was somebody who said, if you want to be good, it's very easy. You practice 10,000 hours, then you are starting to be good. It's easy. So, and the more you do it, you will not avoid mistakes. You will always make mistakes. But you should be able to analyze your mistakes. Sometimes there are people, and this is a very important characteristic that you should have if you want to progress, is that you say, okay, why did it not work? I saw often pilots that said, yeah, I could do nothing. There was -5 meters second and I had to land. But probably somebody else flew another place. He had 3 meters per second lift.
Change your model.
Yeah, change your model. Analyze at any moment. You have a forecast. We spoke about forecasts. Forecast is forecast. That can change during the day. Look at all the details that can give you the information, the crop in the flatlands. Okay, the wind is coming from here, the lake, a little bit smoke, and so on. So there are a lot of information that nature gives us. We have just to look for it. You have to see. And I made hundreds or thousands of mistakes in my life, and I will do that always. And then I analyze, I should have done it in a different way, and what was the reason, or sometimes you do not know why it works. It's just go. And there's an old speech from a former world champion who said, in doubt, lift is where you found it. So if you don't know why it works, then take this lift.
Klaus, what is the biggest, strongest mistakes
you have ever made?
Yeah.
Oh, I made such a lot of mistakes. I do not remember really. No, I cannot really say I made a lot of mistakes. So I made a lot of big mistakes.
Interesting mistake when you have spin in Barcelona Valley.
Yes. Okay.
You
Yeah, that
sometimes
mistake.
you,
Yes.
say
That's
about
right.
this
That
in the
is.
briefing
That was
and-
probably one of my biggest mistakes. So if you're looking that we're speaking about aerodynamics a little bit, I was in my glider, on this glider ASW20 at the time. I had around about 2,000 hours, probably more. Cross country flying. Really, the glider was my second rope. So I flew in the Barcelona Valley, which is a valley surrounded by big mountains, and there I had a 6 meter lift, and I flew like in flatlands. I made 80 kilometers per hour, as steep as I could and as slow as I could. And then suddenly I had in this strong lift a gust, and that made the wing stall, one wing stall, and I went into it was a real I was in a spin suddenly, and I saw the mountain very close to me, below my feet, and I made the right reaction because I made a lot of training with every glider I flew, trying a spin, how to do it, how is the reaction, how fast I can go out, of course in high altitudes. So that was really a possibility to kill me. It was in the first year or second year I was there. And so the lesson learned for me was, especially on certain mountains, you need speed. Speed is an insurance for life. And especially with modern gliders, it's very important. If you're flying on the ridge, you're flying very close to the ground. there I was very close to the ground. I just went out the spin. I had immediately the right reactions. From an instructor point of view, every student who flies alone should have made a spin in high altitudes, how to go out, to recognize with it. Because sometimes you have people, they do not see, they do not understand what's happened. And if you have some training, you made several spins, I made a lot of spins, then you have to go out. You react immediately, and that was life-saving. That was life-saving. So that was a really big mistake, to fly too slow in a strong lift, which has gusts, of course, and then the wing stalled. Down, I went down. So that was really one big mistake, or I made thousands of others concerning the weather and so on. And sometimes, the last flight I made from Spain, probably, so I followed some rotor alignments, but it was not in a good distance from the mountain, and you take this, you make mistakes, and then I struggled. The wind was very strong, but I give not, the thing was not, I think I made a mistake, but it's understandable that you can make mistakes. You are looking for that. We are learning by our mistakes. And then I say it always, when all the stars are aligned, this one time of 10 or 15, then you will make a record. And you will, even on this record, you will make mistakes, but not enough not to do the record. So, mistakes. Mistakes are good when you are able to analyze them.
Yeah.
And don't lie to yourself. Analyze it like it was. So you can tell a story for some friends. It's probably what I'm not doing. So when we make our briefing, I speak about my errors. I speak about what I made wrong. And then you can see that other pilots, they say, oh, Klaus told us he made a mistake, so I can tell my mistake as well. Because you find a lot of pilots, they say, I never make a mistake. I'm very good. So when you never made a mistake, you never learned, really. So when a child touched the hot stuff here, then he learned the lesson.
Max do this one time.
Yeah.
And try.
He analyzed that it's not good to do that. So children are very easy to be, because they are honest. They are honest with themselves. They say, oh, that's burning, so shit.
Very interesting story in the briefing, sometimes about the situation, strong inversion, and inversion is on the line of mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, and strong thermals.
Yeah.
And
that's on the boundary. When you have this strong inversion, that is one situation that I explained, which can be quite dangerous. I saw it quite often when you're flying every day. So they have this inversion, and then sometimes the lift is relatively strong, and the problem is often, let's say in Saint-Crepin, you have this nice mountain where you can make ridge soaring, and when you have an inversion, there are two dangerous things. One is the presence of other gliders which are making ridge soaring, and you try to go through the inversion, because that happens. Sometimes you have a stronger lift and you go, so you need to circle. Ridge soaring, if you are very familiarized with your glider, with how to do it, then you can circle, or sometimes you need to circle. If not, you will not get out of the inversion. What happened, I imagine it, it's for sure different in the physics, but I imagine that you go against this inversion sometimes, and it's a little bit like with a strong lift, and then it pushes you down. And that happens sometimes when you are circling, and here's the mountain, and suddenly you have a huge downdraft. And normally when you have breeze and thermal systems on a ridge, you are going against the ridge, and the closer you are coming, the more lift you have. But sometimes it can happen that you have then a huge downdraft, and then suddenly you are too close to the mountain. You make a mistake because you have not the right speed, and when you have not the right speed, and you try to circle a little bit, and you take a little bit the feet, and then you go in the spin, or you are crashing in the mountain like that, because suddenly 4 meters per second, that can happen. And over the years, we saw quite, with this type of weather, I saw sometimes crashes. And one time I remember there was a crash, and I said it in the morning in the briefing. And we found in Barcelona another glider. I said, "Oh, this is really the situation I expected with this kind of tip." I say, "This is quite dangerous." And 500 meters further, we saw a glider in the ridge, crashed.